Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have Michele Cole, who is the founder of Moving Forward PLC from Alexandria, Virginia. So Michele, who is considered to be a leader in the area of mental health, will be talking to you today about how to navigate a divorce successfully with your children. So, if you're one of the many divorcing couples out there in the Alexandria, Virginia area, it might be a good idea to stop what you're doing right now. Maybe even log out of Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or anything else you happen to be doing that may cause a distraction. And maybe even grab a pen and paper so you can take some notes and listen in to what Michele has to share with us today. So, with that said, welcome to the show, Michele.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah, we're happy to have you as well. We know that you're really busy over there. So let's just jump straight in and make the best use of our time, Michele. Briefly, in your own words, can you share what kinds of people you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they reach out to you for your help?
Alexandria is right outside of Washington, D.C., and I find that a lot of the families that come to me for my help are often very strong personalities, and they've usually come after things have turned into a crisis situation as far as managing their families and their children who are struggling with divorce and separation. And at the point that they come to me, I as I said, I find that they're in crisis, and I'd really like to help people to start to manage and navigate some of this, the divorce, the separation, and how we can do this in a way that builds strength and resiliency in families. And, we look at the statistics and, 50% of the population will be affected by separation and divorce in their lifetime, which just tells us how important it is to find ways to manage this within our family, to keep our family intact as we go through what many look at as a traumatic experience. But studies show that, there's strength and resiliency that can be grown out of trauma of divorce, and that it can be successfully navigated through in such a way that it can build strength. So in order to do that, we have to start to decrease the amount of crisis that's caused by the separation and divorce. And part of that is gaining knowledge as to what are the factors that we need to have in order to mitigate the amount of trauma that happens.
Okay then, Michele, it goes without saying that anything you share with us today is not legal advice or legal assistance. And I'm pretty sure there are many. However, what's the most common misconception you come across while helping your clients on a day-to-day basis?
Again, like you said, this isn't legal advice. This is my work through my practice as a psychotherapist, working with children, adolescents, and families. And I'm getting my PhD and, looking at research. So that's where my knowledge comes from. And I believe your question was, what is it that I see that kind of brings people to me? And I would say that it's crisis and the inability for the families to be able to wrap their arms around the separation and divorce in a way that's healthy.
Okay, so based on what you just shared with us then, Michele, and keeping client confidentiality in mind, can you share an example of how you've helped someone who came to you with that challenge that you just mentioned, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them?
When I find success, the most success I find is when families come to me right away and say, listen, this isn't my area of specialty. I realize that we need some help in trying to navigate this divorce, this separation successfully. And they do this before they tell their children that they're getting separated. So they come to me and they say, Michele, what is it we should say? How is it we should say it? And I always say that the best and most successful separation and divorce is when we look at our family strengths, right? So this is a couple that sees the strength in their ability to be on the same page and talk about with a professional how to do it, what to say. And then when I talk about it with them, I say the first thing that I'd like for both of you to do is think about, in an ideal world, what would the ideal separation and divorce look like for your family? And we would say that in a session, and they would talk about it. That would be some homework. We'd come back, and then we'd talk about it some more. And what would come out of that, what we'd see rise out of that, is how it is that they talk to their children about their separation and their divorce. And it's not about saying, mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, don't like each other, because we know that whether they are still in love with each other, they, of course, will always love each other. They have these children that they love, and children always need to feel that their parents love each other in some way because they are a product of that union. And so I find that's important for me to share with these parents too, that family strength and resilience is out of the parents' ability to navigate and cope with the separation and divorce in a manner that shows the children that we know how to problem solve in this family. It may not be perfect, but then we're going to talk about it. And mom and dad just weren't able to work out some differences. And so they talk about that with their children in a way that's meaningful without placing blame. And after they're able to talk with their children about it, then they're able to move forward in a way that everyone is on the same page. There's no blaming. There's no negativity. And then we look for strengths. Then I'll have the parents come back in after they talk to the children. The children may want to come back in with them if they have questions. And then they use me as a way to help navigate the different feelings and emotions that arise out of the knowledge that their parents are getting separated and divorced, because clearly it can cause people to feel uneasy and anxious, because, not knowing what's going to happen can make people feel, just the unknown can make people feel anxious. And so then we're able to talk about that. And then, I work with the parents and we come up with the strengths of each parent. Like one parent may be better at making dinner. One parent may be better at taking to sporting events. And we allow that parent to continue with that strength. What goes awry is when the parents get angry and start blaming and then try to take over and push out the other parent, because we know that children need both their parents to become well-adjusted. There's strength in having both of their parents with them in different ways. But the best way is if they can continue to do some of the jobs that they were best at in the family, and that each parent allows for that, and that we decrease splitting as much as possible. And, that again, that's allowing that parent to be the expert in that area. And it shows the children that things aren't going to change, that there is stability. Whether mom and dad are married and living together or not, there's still stability. And that decreases anxiety for the children and the family as a whole.
Okay, Michele. So today's topic is how to navigate a divorce successfully with your children. Now, with that in mind, and for those divorcing couples wanting to know more, Michele, what's the most common, and I'm sure, again, just like with the misconceptions, there are many pitfalls out there, but what's the most common but unknown pitfall that they need to avoid no matter how they feel?
So I would say it's hard to just pick one, but I would say if I were to pick one most common, it would be blaming the other parent in front of the children. which just diminishes and causes the children anxiety when they hear their parents talked about in a derogatory way. And that's, that is another reason why I feel like therapy right from the beginning can help to minimize some of this. Instead of looking at what's wrong, let's look at some strengths and try to build resiliency in the family. And unfortunately, what I see is, the blaming and talking badly about the other parent in front of the children. It just leads down a tough path for everybody.
I can speak from my own personal experience. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s now, but as a young child, my parents went through a very volatile divorce. There was lots of violence. There was lots of, shouting and fighting. And I and my little brother were caught up in the middle of that. And we didn't have the kind of resources that you have today. We're talking the 70s now, the mid-70s. So we didn't have people like yourselves, divorce coaches and physiotherapists. So we had to deal with that ourselves. And we were caught in the middle, what you've talked about today, the blame game. And your father's this and your mother's that. And, as little children, we just blamed ourselves because we didn't understand what was going on. And even as a young man in my mid-20s, my early 30s, I still suffered from the repercussions of that divorce. And it took a lot of self-work, a lot of reflection, a lot of talking with experts to be able to cope with the repercussions of what happened in that early stage of my life. So I think the work that you're doing out there is really, really important. So for any divorcing couples that are listening to this and what Michele has just shared with you about the blame game, irrespective of how you feel, no matter who was at fault, who cheated, who did this, who did that, the most vulnerable people in this situation are your children. And it's really important for you just to look at it from that perspective and to talk with an expert like Michele, who will be able to help you to deal with all of those emotions that you're going through now, and with the goal of the children coming out the best of in this very a very unfortunate situation of divorce. So thank you for sharing that with us, Michele. That's a really important point that you just brought up there.
Oh, you're welcome. And that all being said, like you were talking about how when you're in your early 20s, you were able to then, as a young adult, go and find some support and some expert advice on how to navigate through your emotions and the feelings that your parents' divorce left you with. I've been working on a research study, and I've been looking at factors of depression in adult children of divorce. And two of the mitigating factors that I've found are post-secondary education and employment. And what this study ultimately, my results show, and I'm working on getting it published, is that if young adults are able to make it through post-secondary education, they're more likely to be employed, and the trauma from divorce will have been extinguished. It means that they will successfully have gone through the process and found strength and resiliency. So what that's saying is, and some of it may be that, like you were saying, like you go to college, it could be that sometimes they find support system. When I say 50% of all marriages with children end in divorce, that means 50% of those college-age kids are likely to have been through divorce, right? So you find a support system. You find people to talk to. It helps normalize. It helps you to work through and process. And so, in intelligence and education are also resiliency factors. So, continuing to try to find a foundation for our children who are going through divorce, and continuing to help support them and watching their grades and keeping them educated and keeping them moving forward towards college is another big strength and resiliency in families. So that if we see their grades starting to decrease, we know that they need some extra help. They need some extra support. And the goal is to get them through that post-secondary education.
So, Michele, I'd like you to imagine, if you would, it's a Monday morning and you're at home and you're fast asleep and the alarm goes off at 7 a.m. maybe in the morning, and you wake up and have a full day ahead working with the people who you help the most, your clients, these people who find themselves in this unfortunate position of being divorced. How does Michele feel on a day like that? Is this something that you're still very passionate about? If you could just share a little bit about, how you feel on a morning like that, Michele, please go ahead.
Sure. Well, I have tons of energy. My parents were divorced, and my children, I got divorced. And I find that I am very passionate about this work because I believe that there can be strengths that come from going through divorce, and that what it can do is it can help us rise up. And it gives me such encouragement to help to show others that, having gone through that myself, what the strengths and resiliency factors that it gave me that, helped me to be where I am today. I have a Bachelor of Science in Business. I was an accountant for 10 years, and then I decided to go back and get my master's in clinical social work, and then I got my license in clinical social work, and I'm now getting my PhD in philosophy, and with a distinction in social work. So, that has been driven me. So I wake up every morning, and I'm excited to go to work, and I see lots of different people. I see women, that are going through divorce. I see couples that are contemplating separation and divorce. And like I said, I'm always going to shore up that family to help build resiliency and maybe even help the couple to work through their situation, because divorce is really the last route we want to go if we're able to work things out. But if we can't, then we want to do this in an adult way and taking on that adult responsibility.
Okay, Michele, thank you for sharing that personal insight into what a typical day looks like in your world. And I'm sure for somebody who's listening in, they would still want to know a little bit more about who you are. Who is Michele Cole? And especially in terms of your background and your education. You just briefly touched on that, but maybe you could expand on it a little bit. And especially your knowledge as it relates to the topic of mental health. So if you could just share a few moments going over that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. So, like I said, I came to this from an accounting background, and then I started doing a lot of work with children and found I really enjoyed working with them. And that was through my church. And I was encouraged to go back to school and get my mental health license. And so I did that, and I worked with juvenile offenders. I worked with children in the school system. I worked with at-risk youth in Washington, D.C., that were court-ordered. I worked with, children in social skills groups, parenting groups, and then I started my own private practice in Alexandria, and I currently have 6 other therapists that work with me in my practice. And so we're able to, with all of our specialties, so this is one of the things I love about my practice, we're able to help the whole family and keep it in-house. And that doesn't cross confidentiality. But what it does is it enables us to help the whole family. So we might have children seeing one of my therapists, the parents seeing me, and then we have someone else doing family therapy, but we're able to work as a team. And I really find that brings real continuity. Instead of going from 3 different practices, throughout Northern Virginia and navigating traffic, we're able to keep everybody in the same building, and that makes it easier for parents to get to therapy, get their kids to therapy. It just streamlines the whole process. But even better, it just helps us to know where everybody is, and we're able to work as a unit.
Okay, so that's a 360-degree approach then to helping your clients. That's great. That's great. So just take a moment for me, Michele, and picture the kinds of divorcing couples who come to you for a consultation. They come to you for help, and they're wanting to know more about navigating their divorce successfully with their children. Now, with that picture in mind, Michele, what final thoughts would you like to impart before we finish up with our last question for today?
I think that I would say that all of us, myself included, because I find therapy, even for myself, I'm always learning something new about ourselves, that I feel like always take the time out. As soon as you feel like you and your spouse are starting to come to a place where you can't work it out on your own, to seek out therapy. It helps give us insight into ourselves, and it helps us to talk about our feelings, and at least it will help to, at the very beginning, help for you all to determine if you want to stay together or if you no longer can work things out, and give you a way to have insight into yourself so that you're able to hold those negative feelings and be able to move through this with your children in a positive way. And so we need an outsider, somebody that's a mental health professional, to help us to be able to determine that, because we no longer become objective when we're in the midst of our own process, if that makes sense.
It sure does. And thank you for sharing that with us, Michele. Now, finally, if there is somebody out there who feels they want to know more about navigating their divorce successfully for their children, where can they find you? Where would they be able to get in touch with you, Michele?
So my website has all my information on it. It's www.movingforwardplc.com. And it has a picture of me, people that work with me in my practice, all the information about how to contact me, email me, everything you need is right there.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're cruising down the highway in your car, tuning in from home, or maybe you're even out taking a run and you're listening on your personal headset, that's all we have time for today. Again, that was psychotherapist Michele Cole. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Michele. You certainly have demonstrated that you're a true educator and advocate, and I must add, a passionate advocate for your client's success. So thank you, Michele.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You are so welcome. And even more importantly, I'd just like to say a big thank you to you, the listener. Thank you for joining us on this very insightful and informative conversation with one of the top psychotherapists in Alexandria, Virginia today. Again, her name is Michele Cole. Don't forget her name. Make sure you check her out, give her a call, send her an email. I am absolutely convinced that you'll be in good hands. So again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.